good? All right.
Let's go.
Okay, I'm here with the proprietor of Launders LAN, caster extraordinaire, YouTuber, jack of all trades, a lot of shoes, a lot of shirts.
Yeah.
Just tell me how you're doing, first of all, Launders.
Good. I've actually never been to Serbia before, and that's weird because it feels like it's such a hub in Europe for people to come to for Counter-Strike specifically. If you're hardcore and in near around the tier 1 scene, you're going to end up in Serbia at some point, but I never have been here. So I landed, we got some rain today, not too good, but we also have Yanko to show us around. So we'll see how it goes tonight.
We're here for the awards show. It's been a pretty fun year. You, Scrawny, have done a lot of casting. Just tell me about how that's been, because it's become more and more eventful years for you as time's gone on, more and more events, majors. What's the experience been like for the last few years with you guys being able to get more and more of these top tier opportunities?
It just keeps getting better and better. Like our relationship it's always been really good. I mean, we had our last kind of real conversation at Paris, and that was getting a major final, and that was a huge milestone. And it felt like before that happened, when we thought it was going to happen, because it was Blast, and then afterwards thinking like that's the peak. It's never going to get better than that. But since then, our commentary has gotten better. Our relationship has only gotten better. Our lives have gotten more fun. I've really enjoyed commentating CS2 specifically because of MR12 and the smokes. They've made every round so much more interesting to me, and I feel this sort of alacrity for commentary where it just feels like I wonder how many more years there are now. How much more fun will it get? Because it's just been so good so far, and even though, the major final is something we haven't done since the major final, it doesn't really matter. Getting any game in playoffs, doing Shanghai all the way to semifinals. I mean, Shanghai, if it wasn't for the time zones and the conversations around the English stream sort of having to do with people maybe who were sleeping or whatever, that major would have gone down as one of the best majors ever with the quality of games that happened. I mean, after the semifinal, Connor literally cried when we were waiting for our bus back to the hotel. Just got so emotional because the game was so good. So we kind of celebrated that in solitude, but I think that major was awesome, and so was Copenhagen, and so has everything been so far in CS2.
It's interesting that you say you wonder how much longer it's going to go on, because there's this interview I did with you in 2018, you and Scrawny at DreamHack Montreal, and you hadn't made this crack into the top tier yet. You were just starting to kind of establish yourselves. And back then, you had this quote that you said you were ready to do this for the next while, but that you felt you were rationing out a part of your life, a chunk of your life, to pursue this. Mm-hmm. But that you weren't sure how long that would be. You thought it could be finite, it could be a couple of years, it could be 5-10 years. How do you feel about that now?
It's sort of a mix of things. It's not so much, how much energy do I have for it? How much do I enjoy it? That's never changed, but it's definitely the thought of there are better guys than me that have had shorter careers, or there have been things that happen that take you out of the game. There's just no promises. And it really also doesn't matter how good you are at that time. Life happens, and our job can be kind of fickle. And it's also with the type of work, with traveling and specific relationships with different tournament organizers, there's just a lot that can change. I mean, not even necessarily go wrong. And so I guess it's just a matter of always feeling like I'm on my toes when it comes to thinking about the future. And it's funny because you think, when you crack into, us and Chatham Machine were the only forecasters at the, Shanghai playoffs. That's a huge honor. But just because you are given that chance doesn't mean that you're always going to be the only forecasters in all the playoffs in the future. I mean, Harry and Hugo weren't part of that playoffs, and they obviously deserve to be there. So it's not as if they weren't good enough, and there will be times like that in the future. So maybe it's a way of just me being okay, just in case, don't get too excited about, what's going to happen moving forward. But apart from losing a work-life balance and having to do so much more than ever before, there's no reason to not be excited about the future of commentary. When I say how excited will I be, I really want to know, how long am I going to enjoy the game? Because I've always told myself, like, I never want to be the guy that sticks around for the paycheck. Once I don't feel like there's anything left to do, I don't want to see myself going to events and then complaining about being there, going to a beautiful location and then just being upset that I have to travel there because I've been there before. I don't want to get bored of going to Copenhagen, one of the best cities in the world, So those are my trepidations, is thinking about, the future in that respect. But so far so good. Game's been fantastic. Still love traveling. Definitely made for this job.
Back then you also said that you hadn't had a chance to experience burnout yet. I mean, back then as well, there were a lot of casters experiencing burnout. There was a lot of events that were happening. Vince had just retired or stepped back. For you, now having had so much more experience, can you tell me what the process has been? Have you been a big proponent of fighting for more rights for the casters to be able to have more people there, to have a better overall experience for talent? Because, I mean, events keep popping up. Mm-hmm. This next year, a lot more events are popping up. So how is the landscape shaping up for you in terms of that, and how the casting future looks like?
As I kind of mentioned, like, so far so good, and there's only so much I can kind of predict about how things will go in the following year or years. When it comes to our health as casters and our relationships with tournament organizers, that almost has exclusively to do with Scrawny. He's my agent. He does all the negotiations. Like, I do a lot of emails in my life, but when it comes to talking and negotiating and doing the year in review with people over email chains, I let Connor do everything. When it comes to asking for things that we need and making sure when TOs push back a little bit, as happens at any job, people are always trying to make a budget. People are always trying to look out for the business. Connor's the one who I think does a really great job on behalf of all casters in terms of making sure the rates are competitive, making sure people ask for what they should, making sure that we get the right treatment when we're at events, scheduling and everything like that. So I used to be the agent, because I was the caster who had the pre-existing relationships. Like, I knew Mark went through a DreamHack. I knew, I had Blast reach out to me, but then I think there was one time where Connor reached out on a contract negotiation. I told him to do the email because I was too busy, and I had written a draft. And when I saw his email, I was like, I'm never writing an email again. Like, he was just so much better than me. He made me feel like, first of all, that's just less work for me. Also, he's got the talent. So I keep telling him, Connor's going to be an agent when all this is over.
I mean, Connor's going to be an agent, but I don't know what you're going to be, because you have your hat in so many rings, or rings in so many hats, I don't even know.
Yeah.
You've done Boxer, you have your YouTube channel that you run, you also have these LANs that you've started running. First, before we talk about the actual LANs, just tell me about, having so many things going and how important that's been to you in terms of being able to have, whether that's diversifying your plans for the future or just in general having as much as you can going at once.
Yeah, I read a comment the other day. It was like, I don't believe there's only one Launders, like that there's one guy for each thing or whatever. But the reality of it is that I started Boxer, 8 years ago, and now Taylor does most of the designs. I mostly, that's good, that's bad. And I get people working together to do all the creative work and the printing and everything like that. It almost runs itself. I upload my YouTube videos, but I don't edit them. I have an editor of 10 years that I actually got to meet at Launders LAN for the first time. There's no sense in me learning how to edit and spending my time doing it. He does that. So I give him a raw video once a week. That doesn't take that much of my time. I get to go do casting and focus mostly on that, which takes up a lot of time, and there's a lot of time zone issues with trying to manage other businesses and traveling. So I focus most on casting because that makes me the most money. It's the job that's the closest to the dream of being in the server. I get to cast the live action in the server. Like that's pretty much the coolest job I have of anything. So I make it my priority. I focus on it. But with all the things that I do and like running the LAN, there was a lot of learning in the beginning. And with LANs, I spent my entire Christmas break and the last 3 months, all my free time, learning the business and trying to figure out how to execute on the LAN. And it's still obviously a lot to learn. But I imagine one day it'll be another thing where we have lots of help and it's more self-sufficient and I can rely on my partner like Alex to do a lot of it, and I can focus on the promotion and everything. But I do a lot of things because when I started them, it was fun and I had the bandwidth. And as I've added more things on as the years have gone on, it's always because the other things that I'm doing have just are sort of their own organism. They're growing. I've raised them out of being toddlers. They're in their adolescent phase. They still need some love, but they're starting to, go off and find jobs for themselves. And so I have the time to do it. I'm not constantly scrambling every second of my day to like manage 4 businesses or whatever.
What prompted you to create a LAN?
So Alex is the co-founder of In-Game Corp, the company we started ourselves. He was my partner manager at Rivalry, which was my sponsor. And earlier on in the year, we were doing these watch parties because they're a Toronto-based betting company. And I thought that was really cool that I had a sponsor that's actually in my city. So I was like, let's do some live stuff. And watch parties, my main goal, I said this as a clip of my last line, is I want to end loneliness. Okay, I want people to meet their Discord friends of many years. I want people to play with their teammates that they play with online. I don't think that all relationships need to exist in person, but I do think there's something wonderful about people meeting friends they have online. And even if they go back to having those friends online, those real life experiences, we all know are going to be like way, way bigger memories for you. So it's really good to throw those in. And I think over the years streaming, I've definitely really noticed how lonely like a lot of people are in this space. And I think in the last 4 years, it's almost industry agnostic. Everybody has spent a little bit too much time at home. Mm-hmm. And I kind of wanted to solve that, in some way, or contribute to solving that in some way. And no better vehicle than LANs, local LANs, like yelling with your teammates in person. So Alex, his first experience playing a LAN was actually versus me. I was playing with Steel and like Van Silly and like Rabbit. I think our team was like named Tinder Social or something like that. And we were playing like a Toronto local LAN. And he brought that up to me. And I was like, why don't we run a LAN then? And then with Rivalry, we ran the first one. Then we started our own company. And so it's passion for both of us when it comes to the LAN scene in Toronto. It's dormant, but it was thriving at one point. So we know that the people will come to it. So we know that it can be successful. And it answers the question of like, how do you end loneliness? How do you build friendships? How do you get people to meet each other? Because I think that that's something for me that goes beyond Counter-Strike. It goes beyond sport. It goes beyond everything. All these things are just vehicles for friendship, because I think that solves most problems. I think that just solves most problems. So that's why I want to run the LAN.
You didn't just create a LAN or run a LAN, you slapped your own name on it. It's called Launders LAN.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, there's I think maybe I've got a narcissistic streak. I think the reality of it though is that it's the easiest way to market the event. So when we first ran the LAN with Rivalry, it was called Fragfest. And I jokingly called it Launders LAN over and over again on social media, because it was funny, but also because if it's called Fragfest, now you have to tell people it's Fragfest, and then you have to tell people I'm hosting it. Because I know that while I'm relevant as a caster or personality, I have a better chance of getting people to come to events I run. But lots of people want to run events, but because they're more faceless, they might be great operators, absolutely, but it's harder for them to get signups. So I know the easiest way possible, simply call it Launders LAN. And the concept for our LAN is to build out so that every single game is named after an influencer who represents their game. So like we're going to do an event in July. This last event, we soft launched the concept of having Mango LAN in the same building. And we had a $5,000 Melee tournament called Mango LAN. You know Mango's going to be there. You know it's a Smash LAN. People will come either just to meet him as spectators or to sign up to play. And then when we build up to other games, we want to have an influencer for every game and do that exact same thing. So for me, it's a marketing concept. To others, they might look at me as like a Jabali or somebody who just like is obsessed with making about myself. But actually our next LAN is not going to be called Launders LAN. Launders LAN will be inside of it. Mango LAN will be inside of it. But we're going to call it Greed Island. It's another concept that we've been building towards.
Interesting.
Yeah. You watch Hunter x Hunter?
No.
Okay.
But I guess it's related to that.
Oh, yeah.
Launders LAN went pretty well. You had, Lake play there, legendary Launders LAN player. Launders LAN 2, not so much. There were some difficulties. We've talked about it privately a little bit, but I just want to give you a chance to share what was going wrong and just some of your experiences and learnings from that.
Yeah. I guess I'll first say, because everyone just wants me to constantly apologize for this, I just want to say I'm sorry. It was heartbreaking to, basically what happened was at the end of day one, we couldn't figure out a solution to a networking problem in the building. And then we had to refund the team tickets for one of the groups that were playing at the event. The group before played their 3 matches, got through, and on day 2, we finished out the event with the other group. Day 2 was flawless, but unfortunately for the problem that we ran into on day 1, we couldn't find a solution until 11 p.m. And then we realized we've got too many games and no solution, even though we had an idea of what the problem was. And so just had to do the refunds. And I mean, I think throughout that whole day, we've all been to a lot of locals with a lot of delays. I wasn't ashamed that we had tech issues, but I absolutely was ashamed that we failed in the end. Like we actually failed in the end. And it was a matter of time, and I've got a whole litany of excuses that I could go over. But the reality is that with the lessons that we learned from this LAN, if we implement them for the next one, we won't run into these same issues. We'll have ways to test for the problems. We might run into new problems, but essentially the biggest issue of all was just not having an extra day before the LAN started to find problems that we wouldn't be ready for otherwise. And so we will have that next time. And the reason for not having the extra day, I'll just say this, the reason for not having the extra day this time around is because budget-wise, I thought it was just going to cost too much money. The irony is we lost 30K on this LAN running it, partially because we're running a compensation tournament for the teams that couldn't play, partially because we had to refund team tickets, but we still would have been down $10,000. It was just an expensive thing to do. But getting an extra day for the LAN for setup would have cost us, it would be half price as a normal day, maybe would have cost us $7,500. And now obviously we realize that would have saved us money. It would have saved us headache. We wouldn't have been setting up on Saturday instead of just being done and tested and ready on Friday. So adding that in the future is just something that will happen. And yeah, it's a matter of experience. It is the business that we want to run is we want to end up picking up where DreamHack left off in North America. I again, like getting to become a tier 1 Counter-Strike event is not my goal. I never want to get there. I don't want to have like players tweeting out that there's no monitor arms for the practice rooms, for our $1 million tournament where you've got to have everything like top of the line. I'm not interested in that. I like amateur competition. I want the local LAN spirit. I want people meeting each other from other games. That's the beautiful part about DreamHack. And I want to make gaming festival. So having VRS, for example, was one thing that was really cool about the LAN. I don't know if you were going to ask about that, but yeah. I basically, the only reason it even happened was because at the Shanghai Major, was hanging out at the Valve booth during the grand finals. And I wanted to bring up to Brian that it was like really unclear exactly what the rules were for VRS. And he said, just shoot me an email. He said that we're aware that it's not always, or the rules for how VRS runs isn't very clear. There's a lot of tournaments in 2025 that aren't fully announced yet. We're going to have to make exceptions for. So just shoot me an email, send me like what the event looks like, and maybe we can enable you for VRS. So I was like, okay, cool, I'll do that. But originally our goal was to like maybe do it for July. But I don't want to have teams like NRG and other, sort of like top teams run through our event and like kill all the amateur competition. I think in the future, the VRS points will be so valuable that we'll still get teams like that. But again, the goal is like ECL teams. The goal is your first LAN experience. To your teammates that are level 8 on Face It. You're just trying to see if you've got some chemistry. That's the end game. It's what we're doing now. It's also the end game.
So the plan's still to run VRS events in the future, then?
The plan, I think, will be, because there will be lakes. There will be players who will use these matches. I think you need to get 10 to be counted for points. And there aren't that many NA events. There'll be Fragadelphias, and then there'll be us, basically. So I do think that even for the amateur level, for the players who are aspiring to be pro, it's something so valuable for them that I think that we'll do it. The one thing that we won't do is we won't scale our prize pool up to 100,000 to 250,000 and overshadow the amateur level teams that are coming to compete.
How important is establishing that LAN in NA for you specifically? Because we used to have a lot more. We had the Fragadelphias, we had these amateur tournaments, but nothing really came in to fill the gap for a while.
You got anything in BC?
Say again?
You used to have like
we had the gaming stadium in BC as well, but it just seems like everything disappeared. And I mean, Fragadelphia is trying to come back. They've done a few events here and there, but you don't have that circuit as much anymore. So how important is it for you establishing it specifically in NA and trying to make that a new thing? It's
a point of pride that in Toronto there's no LANs, and for me to be like, trust me, there's a player base here. Like, people always brag about cities like Austin as like being rife with Counter-Strike players, and that's absolutely true. Dallas and Austin, and there's a lot of like big cities. I think Toronto is one of them, and so also wanted to prove that. And I mean, as much as we ran into issues at this LAN, there was one point in the day where I was looking around and the lights were off and all the seats were full, and we ran out of chairs, and it was just full. It was full, and there was people yelling, and you couldn't even hear yourself talk, and like the stage game was going, and it was amazing in there. And I think at that point I realized, like, we did show that people will come to Toronto for an event, that people are in Toronto waiting for events. So there's definitely some pride associated with showing that Toronto is a place where people will come for LANs. Another thing I wanted to do though as well is run Moses LAN in Grand Rapids, Michigan, run Frey LAN in London, run fucking Stunna LAN in Bama, you know what I mean? Or Dust LAN if he doesn't want to do
Dinko LAN somewhere.
Yeah, Dinko LAN. Where's he from? Ireland? Yeah.
Yep.
So I wanted to do that. I want to run Scrawny LAN in Montreal. So I want to do that for other people as well, but can't get too ambitious too fast. Still learning how to like do this in Toronto. So yeah, but in the future.
As part of that, I think you've done a really good job establishing not just yourself as a caster, but with all of these other hats in the ring, with all of these other, I guess, not necessarily career paths, but different things that you can explore in the future. Is that something that you plan to keep long-term in terms of where you see your career going? Or is it something that you're having fun with in the meantime while you're casting?
I don't know. I haven't started any of these things with a thought that like it'll take over my career one day. I never think more than 1 year in advance. So my only rule is like do things I enjoy. It's not even a rule, I just do them, just like Alex said, let's run a LAN. So I said, let's do it. I just get that one thought, like that seed. And if it just appears to me that day, I'll just do it. I'll like actually just do it. And then sometimes it goes somewhere. So I don't know. That's how I got into casting. I hated casting at first. I hated casters. I thought they were so corny. I hated the way that they had egos even though they couldn't play. I didn't want to be associated. I mean, for years when I was casting, I hated when people called me a caster. I said, you call me a YouTuber. No, don't call me a caster. And now I have so much more respect for the role, for sure. And that's what I learned about everything that I try to. There's so much more to it. But in terms of what it's going to bring me, it's like, who knows, man? I'm just proud of myself for trying these things, because some of them have gotten somewhere, and it's been so fun. And again, like, goes back to what I was talking about with like friendships. I have just made so many lifelong friends, you know, like Alex came to my engagement party this winter, and it's like, Alex is somebody that I really have had only a relationship with this year, but we've already gone through so much, learning how to run this LAN, getting on calls all the time, like hanging out with each other and playing LANs in my condo and shit like that. So it's really the friendships, lifelong friendships, achieving things. Like, my dream in my life is to be sitting out at like a cottage somewhere in Ontario with my real life friends, talking about all the cool shit we did when we were younger. That's the only thing I think about as an ultimate goal.
Bringing it back to those friendships and your casting as well, you did establish this partnership with Scrawny, and it's been long running. Just bringing it together and to end this on that note, and with what your partnership with Scrawny has brought you in the casting world and in the CS world, how do you look back on the last few years with where that's brought you, and also how you see yourself going in the future? Because you talked a lot about how he's one of your closest friends. You're able to travel with him. You're able to do a lot more with him in that sense. How do you see that kind of developing as you go? How have you enjoyed that?
I mean, it's just wonderful. I mean, like, he just bought a house recently, and he's become house guy. I just got engaged and got a dog and moved into a new place with my fiance in this past like half year. And there's just always new things that are happening in our lives in parallel that we get to talk to each other about. And I think one of the reasons that our relationship keeps giving is because you never hear us we'll always have a joke to talk about on broadcast. It's because we don't hang out or talk at all in between tournaments. I don't know why. We just don't. I'm always so busy now doing business things. I get to play very little like actual games unless I'm traveling to events. Then I'll play Counter-Strike with everyone. When I'm at home, I'll play like the odd game of TFT or something. I'll watch demos, I'll make YouTube videos, but like, we're not really hanging out. So like, whenever we meet up, it's like always fresh. So I think that's just something that incidentally has happened that's just been really good for our relationship, because when we're at events, we'll hang out every day. We'll go out every day. We'll hang out every day. We'll hang in the hotel room, have a beer, talk for all night, you know? So it just feels like it's never gonna get old. He also is a great traveler, and that's something that you cannot make someone into. Some people don't enjoy traveling. Me and Connor both do. We both have an open mind. When I met Connor, he had never seen an avocado in real life.
What?
Connor's from a small town outside of Montreal, had never seen an avocado in real life. I was with him in Shanghai, and he was ordering prawns by himself. I just remember thinking, no way he's touching seafood with his bare hands. You know, like this guy had 6 years ago had not even seen an avocado in person. It's like amazing, but it's because he's a small town kid, but he's kept an open mind. And now we go climbing together when we travel. We order lots of different weird food all the time. We like to just walk around and explore and talk about things. And so he's a great traveler. We never overexhaust our friendship, you know, getting into arguments, playing Counter-Strike online. I think we both have our mindset on being the best in our roles as casters as well. So traditional with the way that we cast. And I'll just say, if he hears this, man, I'm so thankful to have a carry like him in my career as a commentator, because that's not only helped me, you know, get to the stadiums and get the honor of casting like a major finalist, a lot because of Connor, but it's also helped me get better at the job and understand how to do that. And it's also, he's the guy that's brought me the appreciation for, you know, what it means to be a good commentator and how much actually goes into that.
And lastly, just tying this into CS a little bit, we are at the award show. It is a celebration of Counter-Strike.
Yeah.
How does that feel? How does it feel to be here and to be able to do something of this scale just for Counter-Strike alone.
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows HLTV is my favorite site. I just think it's incredible every time HLTV releases a product. I just think that's exactly how I would make it look. And when I see things like the Hall of Fame and the award show and the site improvements and everything, I just think like we are just so lucky to have a site like this in our game. I mean, we sit beside Dota as another Valve game that don't have an HLTV, and they suffer tremendously for it. I mean, you could have nerds in that game going in depth into statistics and talking about history and everything like that, but they don't have a Cynosure website to like all sit around like a campfire and have these discussions. So I think it's just amazing to have events like this. And like the Esports Awards was my first time in Vegas, like a couple of years ago, and we didn't win, but it was still such a fun time. And everyone's just there, like, obviously everyone's there because they have a massive ego and like I think they're the best of their job. But also like everybody's just celebrating wins. Everyone's just celebrating each other winning. And that's just a really cool environment to be in. And with Counter-Strike, it's purely family. It's everybody that we've been spending our whole years with. So it's nice. I'm excited to see everybody wearing suits. I'm excited to see all of our, all the players have been working so hard all year, raise some trophies. And I'm just grateful that we have one that's specifically for Counter-Strike that's executed so well.
Awesome. Thanks for your time. Can't wait to go jump scare a Scrawny with an avocado.
What a crazy fact, isn't it?
That's an insane fact.
Nice, man.